Hello, I am Regina Clark, and I am on a mission to make the world a better place via mentorship and sharing experiences and resources that will help you in supporting your journey to accomplishing the goals that you want. And I will be doing it via sharing things in a positive light. There's enough negativity in the world, and I will try to do my best to be thoughtful with the way I explain things. So for today, well, actually, one quick point. So overall, what you will see from me is a variation of things that might be specific to women. Some things are pro tip for the guys, and then other things are just for everyone. So topics can definitely vary, but the point being is it will be focused on how do we improve our lives, how do we think about things and be proactive and be the key decision makers in how we are successful in our lives or create the lives that we want for ourselves. So today I'm going to have the fun topic of egg freezing. So fun fact, egg freezing is essentially IVF, so in vitro fertilization, but what you do is you stop at a certain point. So you do all the process, but then when they retrieve your eggs, they then freeze the eggs. Now, some people can go to the next step and then they fertilize the eggs with the sperm, then create an embryo. And then some people choose to freeze the embryo. Other people, that embryo goes boop, straight into your uterus, implantation, and there you go. Goal to have a baby and start right then and there. So why I'm actually sharing this egg freezing journey, and you might see me look down because I got my little trusty notepad to try to keep myself on track. So I want to start off with why. So I'll break it up into why I chose this for myself, things to consider specifically for women, and then I also want to talk about things to consider when you're really just going through life, and then things to consider when you're actually thinking through the whole procreation process and thought process for your life, planning for it. So starting with my why. So for me, I was always one of those people that was just like, nope, I'm not going to freeze my eggs. After 40, that's my cutoff. I'll look into adoption, blah, 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 blah. So one of the things I actually had a relationship last year in which I was just like, I actually really thought about like all of those things that sometimes, we romanticize, the marriage, the kids, and all that kind of stuff. Not that I didn't think about those things earlier, but I really actually felt it. So when I actually broke up with that person, I'm not really going to go into details on that. But after we went our separate ways, I really thought about it. I was like, okay, I'm turning 38, which I basically, around the breakup, that's when my birthday was around there. So, turned 38, I gotta meet someone new, because for me, my values, ideally, I would be married, then I would have kids. And then that's the situation. But, so what I decided was, really thinking about it, I'm somewhat of a planner for key moments in my life. So thinking about meeting someone, that might take a year or so. Also factor in like just totally healing from the past relationship, going through the process of really closing that chapter mentally. And then, so that would get me to that 40. So I had to reevaluate and say, hey, Regina, is 40 really the cutoff? What harm would it do for you to add a few more years? What does that look like? What do you also want to consider when you're with someone in that decision making, and how we want to maneuver as a couple? So with freezing my eggs, I felt like that would give me more options. Also, the other piece is we are born with our eggs. Ladies, when we come out our mother's womb, we are gifted with the number of eggs that we will have for our life, and those eggs are aging with us. So what does that mean? When you're approaching 40, your eggs are, I'm just gonna say old, older. So there are more odds of things going wrong because there's you increase your odds for having more defects and whatever have you. And with that means higher potential for miscarriages and all those things. Now, I would highly recommend after this video, if you want more details, go to one of those channels specifically with doctors that specialize in fertility, and they can really go into details about that. I'm going to graze over a few things, but I'm all about checking out credible resources. That's one thing that I went to, but it's not like I was sitting there note-taking like I'm going to be a PhD student. No. I got what I needed and I moved right along and made my decisions that I needed to make. But I strongly recommend going to those channels and checking it out for yourself. So that was really my thinking about this, because one reason why I give myself a cutoff, I've been working since the age of 15. I've been hustling hard, and God willing, by the time I get to my retirement, I really do want to have a chance to just sit back, relax, not have to deal with raising a child. Now, it's one thing to support, a young adult or whatever have you, but the idea of having a teenager and, being, 65 or something like that, it doesn't appeal to me, because I really have worked very hard for much of my life, and I'm gonna do some more of that still. So that's really my why. I think your why has to be whatever makes the most sense for you. I think knowledge is power, so you can make the decision that makes the most sense for you. So something I also want to share. So now, I said I was dating someone and then I broke up, and I was already 37 when we actually met and whatnot. So one of the things I want to highlight is for women, because dare I say it, our time is more valuable than men, specifically when it comes to dating. So outside of that, you decide. But I say this only because they don't have this limit. They can have children. As long as those gateways are open for that sperm and everything's working out and they're healthy, they are good to go for a very long time. We, on the other hand, as ladies, it's not like that. So I really want to highlight the idea of how we have to use discernment, like really good discernment. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have their channels about you don't value yourself, you don't love yourself, I don't really like thinking about that, because what do those terms truly mean for each individual and how you have to break those things down. For me, I have to break it down a different way, and you have to sometimes relearn certain parts and really just consider things, your boundaries, your needs, all those different factors, and it depends on how you are raised, how you're going to perceive the whole self-love, self-worth, all that jazz, right? Codependencies, all these different things. But I'm just going to break it down into discernment. So, and really getting down to what do you want for your life? What are your life goals? How soon do you want to have children? When do you want to get married? And I don't say this in like going crazy if you're around that time limit. Like, I don't use certain goals in order to make yourself stressful, but more so as a guiding line to how you're going to prioritize your time. So if you know you want to be married by 30, I'm way past that. Married by 30, you want to have children by, 32. Throwing out some random numbers. How long do you really have to date, meet different people, all of that stuff? So really it's a matter of when do you really need to start to be more intentional, investing more time in going out into places where you will meet someone of the opposite sex or same sex, whatever your thing is. But at the end of the day, what I'm getting down to is, for the most part, how I'm going to speak is going to be more heterosexual. But if you are not that and you have something else going on, if you still want to have children, it's still a factor. But I think some things are more in your control if you don't have that. I want to have it with my partner and we have to go through this whole reproductive process, yada, yada, yada. So what I'm really saying is you have to think about, how am I going to plan my time to make sure I can meet the right partner? And also, what time are you putting into certain people? Are they really on the same page as you? I think there's so many great people, but if they're not very clear on what they want and their values, and they're not out of alignment with what you want in this time period, then they are not ready. They're disqualified. They're disqualified. Doesn't mean that they are bad. So let's separate those things. They're just disqualified from you entertaining them for potentially being your spouse or partner, for having these goals met: marriage, children. Those are my ideals. If you choose to go out of that order, and hey, if for me I had a child out of wedlock, especially after 30, I would have kept moving and kept the child and called that a day. So this is no shade to anybody. It's just really thinking back. For me, if I was in my early 20s and I was thinking this way, man, you would be able to really be better about some things. And also discernment, I would say it takes some time to self-reflect. You may think your childhood was amazing or not bad or whatever have you, but taking time to consider going to therapy, or even there's lots of great on-demand courses. There's also great books that you can utilize to self-reflect. I've read a lot of books, but I would say hands down one of the best things I stumbled upon with Personal Development School with Thais Gibson. It's amazing. So you can really take the time to really learn about yourself, what things might be getting in your way holistically in life. So not just romance or whatever have you, but just your whole life goal, and your whole life goals. And then you can evaluate what things you might need to work on to make sure you are in the best place to choose the right partner, set the clearest goals, all sorts of things. So that digs into whole thing: career, life goals, finance, relationships, etc. So you could say no for now, and if he comes back very clear later on about really wanting those things, sure, maybe entertain him. But I would say don't take yourself off to market. If you know for sure you want marriage in a certain time frame, reasonable time frame of course, to give you enough time to really make sure you're the right match and that you can last a lifetime, because ideally that's truly the goal most people have. So that's the thing I want to highlight is, if you are young, 20-something year old, and you really have this dream of having all these things done, checked off by a certain point, making sure you're utilizing your time as best as possible and spending it with people who are on the same page as you right now. So that's kind of where I kind of missed the mark in my younger years. Most of the guys are absolutely great, but I think this is something that guys don't really have to think about, is the time limit that they may have. Sometimes they want to cross off more things off their list before they really settle down. Sometimes it has nothing to do with you. There's a whole lot of he's not that into you. Sometimes yes, that's the case. Sometimes he's really just, I need to have all these things crossed off on my list first before I entertain having a serious relationship. And some of these guys will pass up a good thing because they want to sort themselves out for whatever reasons that they need to sort themselves out. So that's why I say you have to be, selfish is not the word, but the best way and I think the best thing for both sides is when people are very clear on what they want and they communicate that and they stay steady with that. Because if you want this and they are not clear on if they want that, then it's gonna be heartbreak later on, some way or the other. Frustration, resentment, etc. So it's really important to be very clear about what you want, and then evaluating if the other person is in alignment, like truly in alignment, and not just saying things just to say it, or not very clear and confident on what they are looking for. So, and again, it's not about saying they're bad, but more so they're just not ready for that in their life right now, and really managing your time. So, and I'm going to speak about all this because sometimes we don't need to get to egg freezing if we use our time as best as possible. And for some of us, some people may need to just freeze for whatever reasons, and I'm going to get to that now. So the other thing I wanted to get to, and I'm looking down at my notes right now, about visions and values. So one of the things I want to talk about is, if you want, first of all, like, know if you want to have children. If you know 100% like you don't want to have children, they say like you're probably gonna stick with that. But if you're just a little on yourself wishy-washy about it, you may want to just go ahead and consider freezing your eggs. And I say that because the life changes, and the best time to freeze your eggs is younger, because they're in their best quality as what they will be, and you will have the most eggs for them to retrieve and freeze based on your genetics. I had actually quite a few, but that's genetics, but still mine were older. So ideally younger is better. So one thing I'm gonna go into now is, I believe that in your young years, or just whenever, as soon as you can think about it, is the importance of every woman doing their reproductive analysis tests. Now, if you know 100%, like, I don't want kids, whatever, you can skip it. But for those who know they want to have children, and it's just a matter of timing, I think you should just go ahead and ask your OBGYN to check you out for your just reproductive health in general. So what this could entail, and it might be more, but for me, when I was going in to freeze my eggs, it was having my AMH levels checked into molecular hormones, test. So basically what that is, a blood test, and then it gives you a gauge on how many eggs are in your reserves. And also what you do is you do an ultrasound so they go up your vagina. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, but whatever, they go up there, and then they really try to ease over to get the ultrasound around your ovaries. And they do this on the second day of your period, so any heavy girls out there, it is awkward. But they count your eggs on each side to get a good gauge. So it's like the AMH, and they're doing this ultrasound. So they're doing all these tests just to check you out to get a good gauge on how many eggs they would be able to retrieve. So that's one thing. And I would say it's important because it's genetics, right? Or life can happen. So you would want to know sooner rather than later if you have less eggs hanging around or other things going around in your system that would make it harder for you to have children. And it might be a longer process for you. So this is where I would say, if you knowing the data about your body will help you be able to prioritize your life a bit more. Now, this goes back to the whole dating sphere and really utilizing your time as best as possible. Now, I'm going to do married people. Married people who maybe are going to have children, they're delaying having children, but you have your spouse and whatnot already. I would still say check out your stuff so you would know if you need to prioritize having the children. So I know people who have been married for many, many years and then they wait to have children. But at the end of the day, remember, we're aging. Our eggs are getting older. Everybody's also, you're getting tired. There's some things you just less patient, whatever. There's all sorts of nuances. Everybody is different. So, that's something to consider. But if you see some concerns, you may want to go ahead and take these steps. Again, about earlier, some people may choose to freeze the embryo and already have that stuff set up, and then, implantation later. But that's where you would be able to talk with your fertility doctors, your OBGYN, etc., to really properly family plan. But the whole goal is to know as much as possible so you can have the opportunity and the power to have the things that you want. Now, when you delay and then you don't realize you might run into some things that slow you down, that's where it might make it harder and more stressful on you and your relationship. So from a single people, I would say you have to consider the same things. So sometimes we focus on our careers and all these different things, or maybe even not, you just don't prioritize dating, right? For me, I work in the fashion industry. It's pretty much predominantly women and gay men. That's the reality of it. The straight men, married already, basically. So when more people meet folks through work and through people they know. So that's the majority. Then you have dating apps and all these different things. Dating apps come with their own thing, so that's that. But that's the thing. So we have to think about ways in which we're going to meet a partner if we're trying to say, hey, I want to have the relationship and then have the baby, etc. So that's just the reality of that, is we have to consider those things. For you who are going to be doctors or big time lawyers or whatever have you, and where you may need to have more time up front focusing on your career, you may want to go ahead and just freeze them eggs. Think about that in advance and freeze them. And I would say, for me, I didn't make much when I was younger, but I would say, sure, it can cost quite a bit to go through this process, but really looking at the numbers, we buy cars, we have nice apartments, we buy luxury this or that, or we just spend money on a lot of different things. And if you were to save only, depending upon how much money you make, but just save what you need to save over time, you could totally, it can be worth it. If you value having children, but you need to have all these other things going on, then the math actually really works out. And again, when I go back to thinking about the aging and then, likelihood, risk, all that stuff, and if you take this into consideration, where they're already, once the embryo is created, yada yada, genetic testing to mitigate, certain issues, then, you would save your money in the long run. That's my humble opinion, so feel free to disagree. But that's my thing, is we really have to know our numbers and really have to think about what we want for our lives to then make the best decision possible for us. And that's all I really wanted to share, is to make sure when we're thinking about having children and kind of just thinking, everything will fall into place. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, hey, I'm an introvert, I'll be off in my corner. The next here it is a year later. So I really wanted to share this information just so more women can have a different perspective, or various perspectives, on egg freezing. Reminder on our reproductive health, we don't have all the time in the world, so we really have to take it into consideration how we're going to do family planning. And it doesn't take already being married to start family planning, because we are starting families later in general. So, and you also have to consider, so we're starting families later. There's all sorts of nuances going on in the world in general. So we have to consider how we're going to maneuver when it comes to getting to that end goal of having a child. And again, most people generally want to have it in a 2-family household, so that step before. So what does that look like? If you're already in a relationship, married, do you really want to delay having your child? Can you afford to do that? So that's just some things to consider today. That's really all I have today. I'm just trying to look and make sure I got all my notes. Yes. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today. If you like this content, feel free to subscribe. I will go through more of the egg freezing process, my experience, and share more details up to egg retrieval, because that's as far as I went. But this channel is not just about fertility in just women.